Today's topic is Deion Sanders and dealing with black people. And of course, the dealing with black people part can come off as a negative connotation. But I'm not trying to infer that. Obviously, I love the African American community. You brothers and sisters, whether you agree with me or like me or not, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have this opportunity that I have. So I'm definitely indebted to you, and I'm grateful for what you do for me and other black people out there that are supported by great people such as yourself. But I want to talk about this because Deion Sanders made some serious mistakes. And I didn't know all of the mistakes that he made, but I want to talk about some of them. Deion Sanders, firstly, was using a lot of pro-black rhetoric in coming to Jackson State. He was telling people like he wants to bring all the black talent back to the black community. He was telling people all kind of stuff, right? And what Deion Sanders did is he rejuvenated hope into the SWAC. And shout out to brother George Macon for saying that. Deion Sanders brought hope back into the SWAC. Now, Deion Sanders is not just a great, probably the best football player of all time, but he is a man with a lot of charisma. Like many athletes don't have the ability that Deion has to woo people, to bring people together. So when you look at somebody like Deion, he has a unique gift that many of us just don't have. So embody that together, that you have that particular person in Black America that is bringing 50,000 people to Jackson State games, and he's promising these players, hey, listen, don't go to these white colleges, come here. And also at the same time, you know, he's bringing in big sponsorships, he's bringing in a lot of development and things like that. But here's what I want to say, and he's wrong for, you know, pretty much changing his tune after leaving and going to Colorado. I do want to hold him accountable for that because that is wrong. But I do want to be honest. Deion Sanders is 58 years old, okay? And a lot of us, when we want to come back and deal with the black community and deal with certain elements of poverty, we're long removed from that. Deion's from Fort Myers, Florida, and he grew up with a single parent. Mother was poor, dad was not around. And after he got out of Florida State, he never faced poverty again. All right. And Deion has done a lot for kids in high school football, Pee Wee League football, now going to University of Colorado. But just think about this guy who comes to Jackson State and he actually may believe that, you know what, I'm actually going to build here. I'm actually going to make a change. And then you start going through the changes. Now, let me just say this. I can align with Deion because I was and have been, you know, doing a lot of my business in Africa. And you can get excited about coming to Africa until you live here. And this is no, you know, shade at the continent or certain countries, but infrastructure, power going out, you know, people not being on time, you know, people sometimes being a lot more deceitful than maybe they would have been in the States in the business community. It all makes you lose hope. It makes you lose hope. And it can certainly change your perspective. This is the reason why a lot of people come to Ghana, Uganda, they move and they end up moving back to the States because it's not what they thought it was. And I think that this happened to Deion Sanders. Now, I want to talk about the fact, and any of you that have been to HBCUs, some are better than others, but we want to just be honest here. When you're somebody like Deion Sanders and you used to working at really good high schools in the NFL, things in administration are running well. Jackson State, from what I understand, has some terrible administration. Even Roland Martin has talked about how HBCUs have people hired that are incompetent, getting the SWAC bad deals, and I'll deal with that in another video. So imagine if you're Deion Sanders and you have all of this talent and you're dealing in Jackson, Mississippi. Also, you know, I know it's crime ridden and your car can get broken into, and I can understand that. That's what I would sort of expect if I lived in Detroit, maybe in certain parts. If I lived in certain parts of St. Louis, certain parts of Sacramento, I could expect that too. But what is difficult is if I was in Jackson State or Alabama A&M, and you can expect the Pookie and Ray Ray incompetence, but what about the incompetence in the administration? And that's something that we don't talk about. Incompetent administration as far as the school, making mistakes, financial aid awards. I mean, and Deion Sanders obviously wasn't going to come out and talk about this, but there was a lot of incompetence at Jackson State. I can guarantee you Because people have talked about it. Some of you brothers out there that went to HBCUs and then you ended up going to, let's say, for a master's degree to PWI, you can understand it. So, you expect the incompetence from the people who are Pookies and Ray Rays, but you don't expect that sort of incompetence happening from college-educated black people. And then it does. And then people are just getting things wrong all of the time. And I'm just gonna be honest, that's been a lot of my experience living in the continent. People are supposed to be the professional class. I expect somebody on the streets to try to scam me, but professional people that have doctorate degrees, people who have law degrees, people who are supposed to be the top tier of the society. And then when it comes to the point where you have a mistrust of your own system, what do you start to say? What am I doing here? Why am I here? I thought I was meant for this, and maybe I'm not. And let me just say this. Obviously, I know what some of you are going to say. Deion used Jackson State for a stepping stone to get to a big university. And that could also be primarily the truth. But the thing about it is this. When you're dealing with our people, there's a lot of patience that has to be had. And with some of our talented people like Deion Sanders, who can bring people together, who are bringing resources in, and maybe not getting compensated for it in the way that they should be. And they're dealing with additional stresses that they shouldn't have to deal with, especially when they've lived a lifestyle of affluence, of fame, of money. They have their own kids. I mean, it's hard to go back to the struggle life. And I know some of you guys will be like, well, that's $300,000 a year, not struggle life. But I mean, Deion was getting more than that commentating. And how much can you do for the community without feeling like you're being exhausted or worn out? And I'm not making excuses for the guy. I'm just telling you the day-to-day problems that I'm pretty sure that he was having. Because I've lived this experience living on the continent, and I kind of see it's a little bit the same. I would imagine. On every level, you're dealing with incompetence that you may not have had to deal with before. And then people are looking at you to build it up. Keep giving more. Keep bringing resources back. And at what cost? What is his personal incentive maybe? And maybe he felt like, you know what? I just can't follow through with this anymore. And he's not the only person that feels like that. Many talented blacks in America feel like that. Now, I understand we still have to be the people to go out and suffer because some of us still have to make it better for the next generation. And I get that. But not everybody wants to be a Jonah. That's why they jump into the sea and get stuck in the big fish. Not everybody wants to be Jeremiah. Not everybody wants to be John the Baptist and be a voice in the wilderness. Some people think that they want to do that, but they're just not built like that. Everybody's not a Malcolm X or a Medgar Evers, especially when they've lived a life of affluence. I mean, Malcolm X never lived that kind of life of affluence. Neither did Medgar Evers or Martin Luther King. But would Malcolm X have been Malcolm X if he lived a millionaire lifestyle and then had to come back to the black community and deal with things he never had to deal with the last 40 years? Probably not. And I think that although he went back on his word, the brother does deserve at least some credit for attempting to try. Because many of us can't even deal in Jackson, Mississippi for 3 months, let alone 3 years. Now, I know that he broke his promise, and we got to call him out for that. But just imagine every day what his life is like, dealing with players, dealing with certain situations, dealing with certain levels of incompetence in administration. It's not easy trying to rebuild black people, guys. It's a thankless task. And a lot of us want Deion Sanders to do it because we know we don't want to do it. And don't get me wrong, he got certain gifts that we don't have, but he's human just like anybody else. And I'm gonna be real. If we want to keep people like that in the black community, they need help. They need our support. They need our financial support. I know brothers like talking about that, but that's just my spiel. But guys, what do you think? It's your boy, O'Shea Duke Jackson, back at it again. Another episode of The Celebrity Drunk. Appreciate you for all that you do. Subscribe, hit the bell. We're out.